Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Vexing, and I have 2.5 billion long-form views on YouTube, and I help my clients get 100 million long-form views a month or more on YouTube. I'll be breaking down one problem I see all YouTubers having, even some of my clients, and how it could be killing your channel. This is a really advanced problem that you probably won't face until you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but it is a big issue nonetheless. And this is an issue prevalent with one of my clients, Barry Lewis. For him, it's not necessarily that big of an issue because it doesn't really affect our long-term goal, which is to get all the views on the videos to roughly 100,000, but it could be a massive issue for you. Let me explain why. This is called audience segmentation. So to understand this, we have to look at his channel, and I'm going to bring up a whiteboard to show you what's going on. So as you can see, his views vary, sometimes 60,000 views, sometimes 100,000 views, sometimes 30,000 views, sometimes 100,000 views, sometimes 200,000 views, sometimes 75,000 views. So to understand what's going on, let's talk about total addressable markets and stuff like that. I hope I can move this. No, I can't move this. This is so unlucky. I can move this over here. Can I move this anywhere? Let's find out. I cannot. Oh, but I can draw. Oh, I can draw. This works out. It's not necessarily the mirror board, but this will work out. So to understand things, does it disappear over time? Okay, let's find out. So to understand things, you have one big market, right? Okay, this is like your total views, right? It's going to disappear. This is so unfortunate. How can I figure this out? I click done. What happens? Okay, I want to move this. Oh, I can move this. Nice. Okay, so chalked aside, to understand this, let me go make sure I have the right tip. Let me go zoom in. Let me go zoom in more. This will be good value. Just stay for a little bit, okay? So to understand this, we have all of these views right here, right? So this could be your total audience, right? Let's just say total audience. I don't know how to spell audience. We're just gonna do total AU. I'll be completely honest. I dropped out of college, so spelling is not my strong suit. So we have the total audience here, right? And let's just say this is 1 million people, right? 1 million people is your total audience, right? Potentially, just say that's your subscribers. That's your total potential audience. We're not even gonna talk about browse, suggested, end screens, anything like that, right? And let's say every bucket you have on your channel has different amounts of people that are going to watch that specific piece of content, right? So let's just say we have bucket 1, we have bucket 2, we have bucket 3, we have bucket 4, right? And then for the sake of that, let's say bucket 1 has 100K total. Let's say bucket 2 has 50K. Let's say bucket 3 has 75K on average. And let's say bucket 3 has like 200K, right? And we're not going to talk about like time expenditure per bucket, etc., because generally the buckets that have more views are either more viral for whatever reason, usually as a function of time, like spending time on videos, making better videos, you get like better return, right? So this is like, we'll signify these by B1, B2, B3, and then B4. And the reason why this is important is that Barry has these buckets. We've talked about this. I've helped build these up for him, and I can break these down for you, right? So one of the buckets we have is, let's say he has like 5 or 6 buckets. So one of them is like testing kitchen gadgets, which always works. This is probably more akin to his 100K bucket. So we'll just do TK for testing kitchen gadgets. And this is something that works really well. He also has a bucket that's just like, let's just say recipes. So we'll denote that with RE. Then he has like a 75K bucket. That could be, we'll say that's air fryer. That's probably actually really what it is. AR, let's do a 5 bucket over here. So we'll do bucket 5. And then we'll have to write this really small. So bucket 5 would be, say 100, and say 100K as well. And let's say this is MRE bucket, which is what he's doing. And then we have AR, then we have recipes, and we have viral videos, right? We'll just note this with VR. So he has 5 buckets here. And the issue is that if we make, let's say, 10 videos here, 20 videos here, 10 videos here, 10 videos here, and then 5 videos here. Actually, that's probably not super accurate. It's probably more like due to time expenditure. We're not even talking about 5 videos here, right? If we do 20 videos on the 50K bucket, that's the same amount of views as 10 videos on the 100K bucket, but it's actually a worse return for us. And the reason why it's a worse return for us is because we're not spending our time appropriately, arguably, on this bucket. Now, this is one of those buckets that he wants to do, totally get it, and we help optimize this bucket as much as possible. But the reality of it is there's very rarely going to be a time where this is going to be greater than 50K views. There's probably less than times, but regardless, it's very unlikely this is going to ever like surpass 50K views. It might get to like 60, 75K views, for sure, going to happen. But it's definitely not something that's going to happen consistently. And if you are a YouTuber and you have this problem where you have a bucket on your channel that gets less views, but you want to do it because you like doing it, or it's easy to do. And that's the biggest issue as well, is if it's something that is easy to do. In this case, Barry, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. He just likes doing it. And I think there is definitely some potential long-term for it as well. But in this case, if this is something that's easy to do, what you have is you have a false sense of completion when you complete the task. You think it's a good task to make this video because, hey, I can make this video, it'll get views, but it's a false sense of progress because you're not making progress towards the things that matter. And I see this happen a lot for a lot of people. This is where audience segmentation comes in. And the reason why I draw the 1 million is that from here, all of this right here goes into the 1 million people that watch this. And what happens is if you double down on something like this, what'll end up happening is you'll get more people that'll watch this, but those people will not watch this right here. They will not watch this right here. They will not watch this right here. They watch right here. So instead of having 1 million total views, what you actually have is something more akin to this, where you still have the 1 million, right? You still have the 1 million total audience, but it's segmented into kind of like, you could say these like this pies right here, right? Where you have like, you know, B1, B2, B3, B4, and then B5. And this is, again, denotations for buckets, right? Which is not a bad thing, right? I want to stress that this is not a bad thing. The bad thing is when you double down on these things, because now instead of getting 1 million audience, you actually are getting an audience of, you're getting 5 audiences that total to 1 million, right? So there's an illusion there. And that illusion is what is really, really bad. And what I mean by that is that if we focus on all of these things, it could potentially kill the channel, where our videos will be recommended to people that are the wrong people, and it could potentially kill them. Now, there's an argument to be made that YouTube will not recommend your content, this specific bucket, to this specific audience, which I have seen also happen. And in this case, in Barry, it actually is what's happening. Very rarely we'll have, you know, bucket 1 recommended to bucket 2 audience, etc. But if you're a new channel, smaller channel with less data points, this will definitely happen to you, as YouTube is not entirely confident as what's going on. It still has a confidence score, and it's still confident to an extent, but it's not entirely confident. And that lack of confidence is actually a massive issue for YouTubers that make content where they have the audience segmented across their channel, when instead they're like, oh, what is going on? I'm not getting views. But the reality is the reason they're not getting views across the channel is because A, like they might be doing things that they think are good because it gets views, but it's not getting a lot of views, or they double down on buckets that are the incorrect buckets, or broadly, this all kind of like culminates into the fact that you have multiple audiences on one channel, which is audience segmentation. And the audience segmentation affects the channel negatively. Now, in this case for Barry, it doesn't really matter because we're just going to get the view flow up, and that's fine. If I had, direct creative control, maybe we act in these buckets. Sometimes we do pull the bucket back, right? We close the lever and we focus on other stuff. Sometimes we go into different direction. We experiment with things, and it has like helped out a lot. Where we're getting like consistently more outliers. We're getting new buckets like the Marie bucket, which is great. That's a test. Now we can kind of like scale on that, things like that. And it doesn't really matter because the game for Barry is like, this is a 10-year game, right? It's fine. We can take steps in the correct direction. That's how we get like things like the clear Big Mac, and we consistently bring our views up and we consistently bring our revenue up, and we double that over time. But one of the things that you're not doing, and I know you're not doing, is you are failing to do this, and you're building multiple audiences on one channel, which is a bad idea. You want one audience on the whole channel, And this is also, in my opinion, the biggest issue that MrBeast is currently facing on his channel. So if I open up MrBeast here, and I'm not the guy to break down MrBeast's strategy, but I do think what's happening is that he's not making videos for an entire audience like he might be under the premise of, and maybe he even knows this, but he's having different segmented audiences watch his videos. Now, something like 50 YouTubers fight for $1 million. That is everyone on YouTube. Everyone on YouTube is super interested in that, right? Like, I see multiple people's faces. I know we've got, there's just so many. There's just too many to count, right? But like, let's say, protect the yacht, protect the Lamborghini. That's one audience, right? That's one specific audience, which is very clearly not his biggest audience. Like these 3 protect videos in a row are videos that are not for his whole audience. It's for a segment of his audience, and that's arguably a bad thing. And of course, you're gonna have flops, right? And you can't like bank every flop on being, oh, this is audience segmentation. But by focusing on different buckets, you do open yourself up for segmenting your audience that will only ever watch that piece of content and not watch your other pieces of content. Even if you're MrBeast, everyone loves MrBeast for the most part. So I, as a MrBeast viewer, might watch all of his content, but I might not watch the protect content. For example, one of my favorite things was the laser maze. I don't know where it's at. I thought this video was one of his better videos, but it didn't perform as well during this specific moving average time, so it didn't make sense, right? But if you survive like 10,000 every day, you're trapped in a grocery store, you're trapped in a bunker, whatever it may be, or spending like 10,000, 100 days trapped with like someone like win a bunch of money, etc. Like that is a bucket that is like ubiquitous to everyone, right? And his like buried alive one, that's like less ubiquitous. So yeah, things like that where you have these different buckets on your channel that are like content pillars. Some might be less efficient than others, less efficacy than others in terms of like getting views and squeezing views out of the audience. And then what happens is you have these multiple audiences on one channel that will only watch one series, won't watch the other series, potentially killing the other series and having a negative feedback loop on your channel. And it's something that not many people talk about. I don't know why, because it's a massive issue that most YouTubers face, especially those over 100,000 subscribers. And it's something that I have seen time and time again. Now, I'll be honest, not all the time it'll be an issue. It won't be an issue every single time, right? You actually use that to your advantage. If you look at Alex Ramosi famously used this advantage where he just took the bucket that was the business-focused content and just went all in on that, and he made more money because that audience was more inclined to buying what he was selling and, joining acquisition.com, buying his book, probably not like a massive revenue driver for him, but, getting to the point where they can join acquisition.com or get acquired by Alex and his team. So from there, like you can use audience segmentation to your advantage to figure out what your most profitable audience is by taking that bucket and looking at the RPMs. If you're selling something, if you are a YouTubepreneur, or if you're an entrepreneur on YouTube using YouTube as a funnel to an external offer, platform, paid community, etc. By figuring out what bucket has the highest RPM, those audiences are the ones that you want to target. So you can definitely niche down and use audience segmentation to your advantage. This is probably something that Iman Ghazi does famously, where he has these kind of top of the funnel buckets, and then he has these buckets that actually convert in terms of like they're like basically video sales letters. So from that, there is an advantage to it, but 9 times out of 10, if you're an entertainment creator or even an education creator, audience segmentation is a deadly thing that could kill your channel, having massive negative feedback loop. There's a client that I have in the entertainment space where this was a massive issue, where we had this audience segmentation, where we had this massive audience, like millions of subscribers, but one of the things that we kept facing is that like our best bucket in terms of views historically did terribly long term, and that's because of audience segmentation and viewer fatigue. Specifically, the audience was segmented in such a way that over time, the audience that was driving those views for this bucket ended up getting fatigued with that bucket because we over relied on it. Again, another issue with audience segmentation is it gives you false signals into things you should double down on. You should double down on these things in theory because they're getting hundreds of thousands of views, maybe millions of views, maybe massive outliers every single time. But over time, that will degrade because you exhaust the ideas, because there's less good ideas overall. You can't make a good idea for buckets, infinitely. If that was the case, that'd be great, but it's not the case. So you get audience fatigue because the ideas get worse over time. Also, people get familiar with the content over time, so they can necessarily kind of predict what's going on. The novelty of the content tends to wear off over time as well. And in that case, what happens is you have audience fatigue, negative feedback loop, because of audience segmentation, because it gives you false positive signals to keep going, which is the best way, which is the reason why my strategy, or one of the strategies that I like, kind of implementing the most, is a rotating content system. We have rotating buckets where we have like 10, 20 buckets, we rotate in and out, so we don't have that issue with, let's say, viewer fatigue via audience segmentation. And ideally, we also kind of avoid audience segmentation because we have so many buckets that instead of segmenting it 20 different ways, in that case, what happens is that you end up segmenting in like still 3 or 4 ways. We have 3 or 4 focus groups or viewer profile groups that you're targeting that will watch specific content in specific buckets, but they might watch 3 or 4 buckets apiece. And that's another way you can go about doing it. There's no really great way to completely remove audience segmentation. Even people like Ryan Trahan, who are probably the most ubiquitous in this case, are probably the best at it, where there is still audience segmentation due to different kind of content pillars and buckets that they develop and they're producing. But it's usually not that big of an issue for them because people are watching Ryan for Ryan rather than Ryan for the content. The same argument can be applied and made for MrBeast, where you're like, hey, I'm watching MrBeast for MrBeast, but then if you take a step further, I'm watching MrBeast giving away money rather than protecting a thing, right? And that's more interesting because in those cases, people want to watch MrBeast for MrBeast, and they don't want to necessarily watch the character that is trying to win the thing, right? Unless you get invested into it, like the Mac Saga, where he has like 3 or 4 videos, and that's like storytelling and development, which is like completely different from like a psychological standpoint and why you want to watch it and be invested in the character, so you can project onto that character and you can watch it, hero's journey and all that bullshit, right? So like that's storytelling that's adjacent and that's like way deeper down the rabbit hole. But fundamentally, audience segmentation is this: where you have one channel, you have multiple buckets on that channel, and then you have an audience that you think is watching all of those, but in reality, they're only like, you have different audiences for different buckets, which is actually a net negative of the channel because you're not providing any value, and there's no value associated with the creator themselves. This is something that Ryan Trahan does really well, where there's value associated with Ryan Trahan, and something like Eric does actually, I think, not very well at all, which is that he has massive audience segmentation, and people only want to watch the videos for the videos rather than the videos for the creator. And I think a great example of someone who's done it really, 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 really well, 2 people that have done it really well, is just focusing on one thing. That's the only thing they focus on. So there is no audience segmentation because the audience is only watching one thing. And a lot of people tell you on YouTube what you should do is you should focus on develop different buckets, which is true because it does insulate you to a degree. But if you focus on one thing really hard and scale it really hard, it's really good, right? So Daniel Dalen, which I can show here if I open up YouTube, Daniel Dalen, who only posts basically the POV stuff. Now, he's not getting like the most consistent amount of views ever, but in the grand scheme of things, this is pretty good for a brand new channel. 100,000 subscribers in the first year, 52 videos is nuts. He's only doing the POV stuff. And the POV stuff is the stuff that is doing the most. So there's no audience segmentation at all because he only has one content type on the channel. So you either fuck with him or you don't, and you don't watch him. So that's a not really high level strategy. But hey, if you just want to do one thing really well and scale it really hard, you can end up like Casey Neistat, which is this guy who just does vlogs. That's all he does. He doesn't do like education. He doesn't do this. Occasionally he does storytelling things. But guess what? He can get away with it because he's built an audience and association with himself that is so good that it doesn't matter what he posts. The same thing, probably not to be said with Marquise Brownlee, as he does, like, a myriad of content. But Marquise does the same thing that Ryan Trahan does, that you watch Marquise for Marquise, not even necessarily the value. And from there, if you want to go a step further on top about how you can remove audience segmentation, is you have channel segmentation, right? So you have different audiences on different channels. So he has autofocus. The channel that I watch, I don't watch many Marquise Brownlee videos. The FPI one was a really good one, so that's an exception. But I watch autofocus every single video because I find it really interesting. So because of that, I would not watch any of Marcus's other content on his channel, which I would be a bad viewer for Marcus. I would have a negative impact on his channel. Probably not because he's so big and YouTube has so many data points for Marcus specifically because he uploads so much, he's so prolific, that they could probably figure out that, hey, I'm not going to get recommended the Marcus content. That being said, I watch a lot of the autofocus stuff because he understands that, hey, I want to make a channel for this type of content, for this type of audience, and that's the only content he makes. I fucking love it. So a way to potentially remove audience segmentation is A, just do one thing really, really hard. B, rotate enough formats where A, you don't get fatigued, so you don't have the, let's say, false positive signals that you're interpreting to double down on. And then you also can ignore viewer fatigue if you do that. And then tertiary to that, just have different channels for different pieces of content. I know creators like to do vlogs. I know who creators, the same guys that like to do vlogs like to do XYZ thing, that also like to do XYZ thing. So they might have 3 or 4 channels in some cases, or a podcast. All those can live on separate different channels, which is why you have audience segmentation there. But in that case, it's not necessarily audience segmentation. You're just putting audiences on different channels. So you avoid audience segmentation on the main channels. You can focus on what you like doing at a very high level. I think the guys that do this the best probably right now are the food YouTubers and the car YouTubers, where there is definitely audience segmentation, but the view band difference between the different types of content they have is actually negligible, meaning that the audience is watching them for themselves rather than them for the actual content they're posting, which is the place that you want to be as a creator. And you can only really get that if you have a lot of viewer equity built up on your channel and you have decent returning viewers. And viewer equity is another concept that we can talk about, but essentially TLDR is if I have positive experience with you and I have enough positive experiences with you, you build viewer equity in the channel. Brand equity, if you will, is probably the most adjacent terminology. And from there, doesn't matter what I upload, I'm going to get views because I have high viewer equity. Another great example is Whistle and Diesel. Whistle and Diesel has incredibly high viewer equity, where his I think average video is like 3 to 5 million views, which again is insane because he does exactly what he says in the videos, and that's like his whole thing, right? Everyone wants to watch Whistle and Diesel because of what Whistle and Diesel does, and you know what you're getting when you watch a Whistle and Diesel video, regardless of the video. So that's high viewer equity. You can do many different formats on this channel. It doesn't suffer the same issue as audience segmentation. So yeah, I know this is kind of a long-winded rant. It's really like high level stuff, and it might help you, might not help you. I know I talk fast. Just slow the video down to 0.75 times speed. If I talk too fast, sorry, I'm not changing that. That's just kind of how I am. I'm animated. I talk really fast. I can, understand information really fast and then expel it really fast. So my fault. But yeah, if you found this helpful and you want to work with me and to potentially cure yourself of audience segmentation or develop a strategy that will kind of insulate you from it or take it to advantage or use it to its advantage, you can hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter is in the description here. If you see this on Twitter, hey, you just send me a DM that you want to work. Again, the minimum requirement is 100,000 subscribers and making at least $5,000 a month because my prices start at $1,500 a month and they go up from there. If you want to use the tools I use, oneof10.com. It's the only tool I use. Essentially, I use 2 other tools, but oneof10.com is the tool I use every single day without fail. And if you enjoy this video, you're going to love this next one here.